Hi, this is Verbal, and you're listening to Artistry.
Welcome to another episode of Artistry, where art meets industry. We are your hosts, Rachelle Etienne-Robinson and Stan Substantial Robinson. All right, and welcome back. Today's guest is Verbal. Verbal is an international hip-hop recording artist, music video director, and record producer. Mr. Verbal, thank you so much for being here today.
Wow, thank you for the very kind intro. Thank you for having me.
Thank
Our pleasure.
you.
Our pleasure.
So let's start from the beginning. I know you have been in the industry now well over, 20 years?
Yes, that's correct.
And originally from Japan, but you actually did go to school here briefly and then came back for college, where you studied philosophy and business marketing. Tell us about that experience, coming, from Japan to the U.S., what that experience was like for you, and then coming back as an adult.
Sure. I am, of Korean descent, third generation Korean, to be exact, born and raised in Japan. Went to international school in Japan, so I always aspired to go to a college, and receive further education in the United States. So upon graduating high school, I went to Boston College between 93 to 97, where, as you mentioned, I studied business, mainly focusing on marketing, and also double majored in philosophy. And upon graduating, I had a brief stint in the finance industry working, but during which time I had a chance to come back to Japan. And me and my friend from high school, who I had a band with, jumped in the studio together and made a demo for old time's sake. And, from there, my music career pretty much started. So that kind of brought me back to Japan. In the States, I was, like I said, I was working, and I was also beginning to pursue my master's degree and such. So I was doing all types of things in the States, in Boston, but I had to pretty much leave that behind and, come back to Japan to continue doing music. And, I've been here ever since, as you mentioned, 20 years.
Yeah. And it almost didn't happen because like you mentioned, upon graduating, you also were studying theology, right? To become a pastor?
Yes. It all happened very quickly within a short time. So my college experience was very, like full on, like, I met very wonderful people who influenced me into, studying philosophy, obviously, as I mentioned, and also pursuing theology, because in college, a lot of the Korean American friends that I had went to church, and they would always ask me, yo, you should go to church. And, I wasn't Christian when I first entered college. So, I would, start going to, start attending Bible studies, just because, my friends wouldn't, they would keep bugging me about it. So I would go. And then eventually that and the Bible study, as well as the philosophical studies, which I was receiving, kind of, synergized. And my interest to pursue theology pretty much increased. And, that's why I decided to pursue my master's for theology.
So fast forward a little bit. So while in school, you met the beautiful young lady by the name of Yoon, who...
That's right.
I find your story very interesting because I read that you all the two of you married in September of 2004. Stan and I got married in September of 2004 as well. Yeah. And we are also college sweethearts. So I was like, aw, that's so sweet.
and business partners.
And we're business partners. So,
okay, I did not know that. First time hearing that, and congratulations. Very elated.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so when I read that, I was like, aw, that's so good. I'm so happy. We have that in common already. Right. But I think it's great because, obviously you were well on your way by that time with, you were seeing some success from your music. And then upon starting your business, Ambush, how did you convince your then girlfriend to come to Japan, and how did that work out with her parents? Convincing her parents to give the okay.
Yeah, so like I said, it all happened so quickly towards the latter part of my my college years when I was looking for a job, and then that's around the time I met her, and so as I said, when music kind of started bringing me back to Japan. At that time, I was already dating Yoon, and we were doing the long distance thing. So it's not like nowadays where we could just jump on Zoom or whatever, like jump on a call or something. Like it was a proper long distance thing, and so during which time she was already graduated college and working in a graphic design firm. So I said, hey, we should try to do something creative together, because I was doing music and she was doing graphics. I was like, why don't we, start a design team or like a design agency or something, It was just like off the top of my head. And first she was like, oh, it's really hard to start those things. And, it's like a reality check. But I was like, hey, you never know. You got to just try it to see if it works, And then
leap of faith.
So it was like 2001, 2002. That's around the time when she had decided to come to Japan. And, because we were a very new, almost like a startup kind of design team, I thought the name Ambush would be very appropriate, because we would have ideas and ambush the world with it. It was just kind of like, it just, off the top of my head, an inspiration. So the name Ambush stuck with us ever since.
Yeah, wow. And it's worked. I mean, that's exactly what you've done. I mean, between your collaborations with several artists and fashion houses, that's exactly what you guys have done. Is spark some trouble in the industry, but good trouble in the best way.
And then the dynamics of the way we started still exist today, because she's the designer, she's the person who is the genesis of the DNA of each collection that we present every season. All the creative ideas, and I would pretty much support her. I'm more the the guy doing the grunt work, if you will, doing more of the business side of things. Obviously, I partake in the creative elements when necessary, but she's pretty much spearheads the whole, design aspect, and, drive the whole production team. So yeah, it's pretty much the same, except we're doing fashion now, we're doing jewelry and ready to wear, and, working out of Tokyo.
That's awesome.
So, as the world is battling and dealing with the pandemic, how has that affected you as far as business?
So, yes, the pandemic obviously has affected all of us, and we're not, us in Japan, we're definitely not exempt from that. Japan kind of, was slow at reacting, but me and Yoon, we knew it was coming. We would watch the international news and saw how it was affecting everybody. We work a lot with Europe, mainly Italy, and Italy was affected very fast. So, speaking to our cohorts in Italy, we realized how this, the gravity of it. So, from around February, March, we started acting quickly. We knew the remote work situation was going into effect. So, we're telling our employees to get ready for it. So, to answer your question, yeah, like the March, April is pretty tough, man. It just like really hit us hard. But during that time, we were sort of, getting ready for that next step, because after Corona, it's going to be that new normal, the word that everybody uses. It's going to change. It's not going to go back to what it used to be. So with the new scene, how are we going to adapt? And then if anything, we're, good at adapting. We want to always try new things. So we thought, hey, we had a lot of projects coming up for 2020, 2021. We'll kind of flip it and switch it around and, time it differently. We would have different events coming up, but maybe it could be virtual. We're just sort of changing the scenario and reinventing each of the projects so it makes sense with the current situation.
And you personally have experienced other disasters while in business. In 2011, you had dropped Visionaire, which was your debut solo album. At the same time, there was unfortunately the Tohoku earthquake and tsunami that sort of, of course, took over all things business and personal. How did that affect you, and how have you been able to challenge that? Wow.
So, 2011. So prior to that, the 2008, the financial crisis was what hit the world. Japan was a little bit, it wasn't as direct of a hit. It did, but it wasn't too consequential for what I was doing. But 2011 was just around the time, when like I said, like you mentioned, getting ready for the drop of the Visionaire album. That was my first solo album that I was releasing. So I was super excited about it. Had a list of great features and, great producer team that I was working with. But when the earthquake hit, Japan's an archipelago with, many earthquakes throughout the year. Stan, I'm sure when you were in Japan, you experienced some. It's so we're very used to these earthquakes, but this was big. I remember I was having a meeting in my office with a gentleman, and when the quake hit, it shook the building so hard that the wall, which the monitor TV was mounted, cracked. It just split. And we're like, oh shit. And let's get out of this building. So we ran down the stairs, and my office is located kind of diagonally from Tower Records, the only one that still exists today. You know it. So Tower Records was shaking. The antennas on top of the buildings were it was just like what do you call it? It was just like going back and forth like metronome. Like it was crazy, Wow. Some buildings' windows were cracked. People were in the middle of the street. Cars weren't going through the streets because, just people were using the main roads to sort of evacuate, if you will. So, it was a very scary moment. And the news, the media network was mainly used for, informing the citizens of what's happening and such. So, it was a very, serious moment. It was very, it's scary to put it, to say the least. And and it affected my release of the album. And, the name of the main single that I had was called Blackout. So that wasn't really appropriate at that time either, because there was a lot of blackouts. And so for me, I took the, difficult decisions to not really promote it, because I thought that wasn't really a time to sort of express my certain ways of doing my art form at that time. So I kind of put it to rest. Yeah.
You've had a very amazing career, and was it 20 plus years in the industry. And so I think it's safe to say your ability to adapt over these decades has been crucial to your success. And so what would you contribute? What are the specific things that you think you've had to do that have contributed to your sustainability, I guess, in the industry, and how you've been able to maintain a successful career?
Man, just staying curious, and having great mentors around me who are always striving to be better. They would give me a reality check. So those two things really put me, on the spot all the time, if you will. Always asking myself, am I doing my best? Am I, evolving? So I always have love for music, mainly hip hop. That's where I started. So I'm always asking myself, how is hip hop evolving? How's music evolving? I remember with you, Stan, when you were in Japan, like many years ago, we would talk about the certain types of music, and that at that time there were certain trends, and I think we were like, oh yeah, I don't know if that's like cool or whatever, but some of the things remained to be cool and some of the things didn't. But
sure.
Who knows what happens, with the creative industry. So for me, I'm trying to keep like a very open mind, trying to stay humble. I'm always trying to adapt to the new technologies that's up and coming. I'm always interested in like the business side of the industry as well. So I'm always, trying to find the best way for an artist or even myself to try to be seen, to be recognized.
But also reinvent yourself too. You have, prior to being named Verbal, you used to go by your former name, L Universe. What was the cause for the change? What was the reason behind it?
It wasn't really a change, So my thing was, I always looked up the artists that had different monikers and aliases. I thought it was always cool. I always liked the variability of how an artist could have one identity but also have another. It's kind of hard to explain, but hip hop was very eye-opening for me growing up in Japan, because for example, rock and roll, if you're like a rock and roll guitarist, you can't be a real estate agent. If you're like a rock and roll artist, it's like, oh, I do fashion business. It's like, you do business? That's not cool. You gotta like stick to your guns and only play the best guitar or something. Like, I don't know, like when I was growing up, like you only had to do like one thing. So I was like, why? I was a skateboarder growing up, and I love hip hop. But back when I was skating, people were like, oh, you listen to like hip hop? It's like, you got to listen to like, Suicidal Tendencies, which I also did. But I was like, why can't you listen to different things and like the skateboard? Like now it's not like that. But when I was growing up, people always had to be like, stick to one craft. But, I don't mean to divert the conversation, but I just want to explain this to kind of address the, address this so that it's more clear why I name myself differently. But hip hop allowed me to sort of, or introduce me to the concept of, being an artist for yourself, but also, I don't know, you could be like a ghostwriter. Like I know like Big Daddy Kane was like ghostwriting, Nas was ghostwriting. I know like I heard Jay-Z used to ghostwrite for like Foxy Brown, whatever, you know, but they were like not ashamed of it. It was cool. Like it was just like, hey, who cares? It's like, you know, Sugar Hill Gang, they didn't write their own songs, but people like the music. Like there was like, who cares? But around that time, the context was, oh, you're not writing your own shit. Like, you know, but for me, it's like, if it's entertainment, it's entertainment. And people were so like open about it, you know, doing business, side hustles. And I was like, wow, that's like, so like, you know, I don't know, like, you know, you're just so forthright about evolving, you know, because that's just how evolution of humankind, you got to like do what you can. Like, you know, after a war, you know, you could be a cobbler, but you can't just keep making shoes. Maybe you might have to utilize that skill to do something else. But anyway, I don't want to digress too much, but for me, when I named myself L Universe, it was around the time when, like I said, I was coming out my first record for my group m-flo. That was like 1999. And around that time I had met Nujabes at the same time. So, and the way I met Nujabes was before my first record for m-flo came out, I was letting him hear my demo for m-flo. I was like, yo, I'm starting this new group. And I was always going to his record store called Guinness Records, you know, and rest in peace, Nujabes, you know, super influential producer. You know, it's like a big brother. So anyway, I was at Guinness Records. He was playing my tape and he was like, yo, you should come to my house and do a song. I was like, for real? I'm like, you produce? He was like, yeah, I'm starting to. So that's before Hideout Production started, right? This is like 1997 or 1998. So I was like, okay, word, you know, so I went to his place. He had this setup, you know, and back then it was really different for a person to just have a setup at home with a bunch of records and just recording out of the house. It was like a new thing, you know, because people were mostly like, yo, you got to go to a studio. But he was like, why? I could just record out of my living room. I'm like, cool. That's so dope. I'm like, and he was very influential in that, you know, mode of thinking. But anyway, so I went there, recorded, but it was all in English because that's how I was inspired to record. And when I did, he was like, so, okay, we want to press some vinyls. I was like, what? That's so cool. Like, we're gonna put this out. Let's do it. And then he was like, so are you going to be verbal? And that's when I was like, well, I want to separate my imagery from what I was doing in Japan. Right. Because that m-flo, you know, not to toot my own horns, but that was picking up very quickly. Yeah. And it was picking up in the, like, a billboards of Japan. It's called like Oricon in Japan, but it was picking up on the charts, you know, and I was getting some, you know, TV press and whatnot. And, you know, with the general public noticing, I knew back then that I would have to sort of cater my crafts for m-flo to the Japanese public. Whereas I came from a place where I was listening to underground music. You know, I was like, around that time, I was like heavily into company flow, you know, super into like Cool Keith and artists like that. So I was like, okay, in order for me to retain that, I might have to, you know, create a new moniker for myself where I would just do whatever I like. So I was like, Nujabes, I'm going to call myself L Universe. He was like, cool. He just wanted to put out good music. He didn't care. Yeah, so that's how my first record with him called Ain't No Mystery happened.
Yeah, I got the vinyl.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Because it's crazy. When I met you in 2000, you know, of course, I met you as L Universe. And I think maybe, I can't remember if it was right before the session or after the session that we hung out when Jun had told me that when he had told me about Verbal, right, your alter ego. And then it helped me realize, he's like, oh, like this guy's like really big. I don't know if you know about m-flo. And it yeah, and it was wild because I mean, and you and to your credit, man, you've always been such a really nice and humble person, right? Like probably probably the opposite of what people expect from a pop star, so to speak, right? You've consistently been like just this very humble and gracious guy the entire time I've known you. And so, but it's wild, but like it's always refreshing when I think about all that you've accomplished and how humble you've remained and how down to earth you've remained. Because to this day, man, I've never told you, but you know, as somebody who's worked in education for over 20 years, I come across students, man, like, you know, kids who aren't even 20 years old who know who m-flo is, you know, little black kids. Yeah, little black kids from like the area I grew up. And when I posted the pic for Throwback Thursday, one of my former students is like, wait, like verbal, like m-flo verbal, like, you know. And so, yeah, so like what you've done
still
resonates to this day with like, you know, with the younger generation. And it's just beautiful to see. And it's great to see, like I said, again, for like, for one of the good guys, man, you know what I mean? Like I truly feel like that about you and some of our, a lot of our peer group. We use the hashtag, our friends are dope, right? Like my friends are dope. And so like, I love seeing that because it's not what, it's very much not what people think of when they think of, pop stars, so to speak. So kudos to you, on that.
Wow. And just to mention, thank you for your, you know, very, high, like kind words. But yeah, that photo that you put up, I had that weird mug and I was like, wow, dude, why was I making that kind of face? It's like we were just joking around, but you know, I think I had to have that rapper face or something. I don't know what it was. But yeah, it was good times, man. That brought a lot of memories back.
Yeah, no, that was when you talk about recording in the living room, that was Park Ave Studios is what he used to call it. And that's where we were, you know, in Nujabes's living room.
And you know, the Monorisic, you know, aka Dexstream, that was on the, you know,
such a great
photo as well. You know, rest in peace to him as well. He was like the funniest, wildest guy.
That's why you were making the face.
You know, he used to live in this like small apartment, right? Before, I mean, he eventually would move on, and you know, into a bigger spot. But when he first came to Tokyo, he was a rock star, right? So he was like, yo, I'm going to come to Tokyo with just a guitar and I'm going to make it. Right. But then like the first night he went to a club that played hip hop and he was like, oh, forget that. I'm going to be a DJ. So that's how that's how he went from wanting to become a rock star to becoming a DJ. And then he started producing and he was quick with it. You know, he would bang out beats and, you know, and also, he was the most hilarious guy. He would like light up the room. You know, I remember like we would get on June's car, Nujabes' car with him and you. I think we were all in the car together, like heading to some restaurant because we would just kick it. And yeah, man, he would definitely like light up any room and you know, yeah, definitely, man. It was good times.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Now you also produce. You've directed music videos. You even, on top of course, having your own company, but you also DJ.
Well, I would say like I still can, but not as much. I was heavily into it till about 3-4 years ago. I was DJing at Ultra Music Festival, Tomorrowland, and you know, I was really, really into it. And you know, a lot of the other work that I do was, you know, I had to start to prioritize as fun as it was. And, you know, it took a toll on me, you know, because look, I mean, if you go to Belgium just to go DJ, you know, unless you have like some circuit going on around Europe or, you know, some guys, this is their like main core business, right? So for me, I would DJ, but, you know, I would also produce music for the in Japan, and I would also run my fashion brand Ambush. So, you know, eventually my DJing slowed down just because I was having too much fun with it, and you know, I didn't want it to take time away from business. So eventually I might pick it up again though.
Right.
You've also so after m-flo disbanded, you've worked with other groups.
Actually, we're still doing m-flo right now.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. For the record.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the record. So when we started m-flo, it was me, the producer Taku, who I went to school with since elementary school, and then Lisa, the vocalist.
Right.
And after doing 2 albums, she had left the group to pursue her solo career. And after that, we would feature different artists on an album, you know, because we were very, very influenced by Neptune. So we would coin the phrase m-flo loves so-and-so instead of saying featuring. And that pretty much, you know, picked up, and that became our phase 2 of our career. Right. And then 3 years ago, Lisa, you know, we've been always asking her to come back to the group. So she did. And right now we're still making music, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're still going around. And we started touring the States from about 2 years ago. We were performing at LA's Anime Expo. We went to Anime Central in Chicago. We realized that a lot of people appreciate, maybe your students might, you know, know this, but we did a lot of songs for anime and also for games. And there's a huge population in the States that really appreciates Japanese anime, Japanese games and such, and they recognize us. You know, it was crazy. So when I was on stage in Microsoft Theater 2 years ago, we were like, okay, it's our first time performing in the States as m-flo. Nobody's gonna know us, but let's just have fun. Right. We go out, there's like 5,000 people. Yeah. And they were like singing our hooks in Japanese, you know? It was the most surreal experience. Yeah. And I was like, yo, of course, because 120,000 people come to Anime Expo because they like anime.
Absolutely.
Of course they would know, or at least like have an inkling of what we're about. So that really put us on that the anime map, if you will. And you know, we've been doing that, going hard on that ever since. And you know, it's been a ride.
Yeah, it's awesome to see, man. Like I had the pleasure of meeting Taku at Otakon last year. Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
So we sat on a panel together, and that's where I met Mimi for the first time as well. And so yeah, man. No, you guys. There, I mean, it's just it's a crazy scene. You know, I myself am a music director for a convention called BlurredCon. Blurred just is a black nerd, and and there's just a huge and it's a huge. I mean, you guys have a huge following here in the States, and it's like it's always. You know, as somebody who's just been going back and forth to Japan since, you know, for like 20 years now. It's just so dope to see people who, when I first started going, it just seemed so separate, like in those days. And now to see like, you know, just like how like globally, like just how far the reach is, you know, it's just beautiful, man. It's really, really dope.
I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying about back then. You know, if you were into hip hop, you have to be you have to come from a certain background, or you have to only be a certain, you know, it was like a racial thing almost. If you're a skater, you can only listen to certain types of music. If you're into anime, you have to be a certain way. You have to look a certain way, you know, and such. But now, man, like with with social media, it's the lines are like, you know, there's no boundaries, you know. Right. It's like whatever makes sense. Whatever is cool. You know, just recently when Travis Scott did that show on Fortnite, I mean, 20 years ago, who would think a hip hop artist would be performing virtually inside a game? Right. You know, back then people would be like, "Oh, that's you're a nerd or something." You know, like people would kind of point fingers at you. But I'm like, you know, in Japan, we've always been about that. You know, It's like my father ran a game arcade, so I've been a nerd ever since I was born. So I was like, you know, so it now I love how it is, how everybody's so open about it, and I love how the students come up to you and you guys could so openly speak about different cultures. You know, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great.
Some other groups that you've worked with are the Mike Bandits.
Yeah.
Then you also had Teriyaki Boyz. Folks might be familiar with the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift.
That's going on right now. Everybody's not a spoiler, but Lil Yachty's officially asking us to use if he can use the track for Tokyo Drift to do his own rendition of it. So by this time, the song should be out.
Wow.
Okay, good.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So you know what? I was actually supposed to be in Coachella this past April, you know, because obviously because of that pandemic, everything got canceled and such. But I'm currently working with 88 Rising.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Shout out to Sean Miyashiro. You know, him and I, we kind of like working on a couple different projects, and he was like, "Yo, you guys should represent Japan." I was like, "I don't know, what song should we do?" He's like, "Oh, you guys have to do Tokyo Drift, dude." I was like, "Oh man, okay, let me talk to Nigo. Let me bring back the guys, you know, call the guys up and see what we could do." So we were all like amped up to do it, you know. So hopefully, you know, if Coachella happens again, or if another 88 Rising stage happens again, you know, we'd love to jump on and, you know,
that'd be
do
awesome.
this. But in the meanwhile, like on social media, Rich Brian, all these other artists, they were, you know, doing the remixes, like throwing their own verses down and, you know, continuing the legacy. So that was really, you know, we really appreciate it. It's fun watching these people do it. So now Lil Yachty is going to make it official. So I'm super excited about that.
That's dope.
That's awesome.
Hey, if you guys, you know, when things, when our new normal is in full swing, you know, definitely let us know the next time you're stateside. It's funny because 88 Rising, they did a concert. We're really close to, we're in the Washington, D.C. area. And so they actually did a huge concert over at the MGM, which is about 10 minutes from where we are now. So, yeah, definitely let us know, man. You know, like we'll come out and see you. It'd be great to see you on this side of things.
1,000%. I have to go to your school to see like how you're teaching and how you're doing your thing, man.
Yeah, well, it's funny these days. So you know, now that with substantial art and music, we're kind of we're full time doing this. But the education we do now is more for like consulting various like artists and musicians. Then I still work with Omega School, which is an audio engineering school where I teach music business classes. But definitely, man, I keep in touch with a lot of these students, and they come to all of the conventions that I'm at. You know what I mean? So we'll figure it out. I'll find a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because they would love
please. It. That'll be dope to, you know, kick it and, you know, catch up, man.
Yeah, for sure.
And take new pictures.
Yes, get some new pictures.
Take new pictures. Yeah. This time without a mug.
Right. So producing, do you perform as an executive producer? Are you creating beats as well? Like, walk us through that whole process of you producing, and then also with directing. Do you plan to do any future projects as well? Yeah.
So in terms of producing, I was heavily into the creative aspect of it when I, you know, first started, you know, back, you know, I started producing the Mike Bandits, like you mentioned, this female rap duo, Heartsdales, like that was like 2003. Like, you know, this, I was like super inspired to bring hip hop into the Japan mainstream, you know. So I was bringing these really eclectic group of MCs and, you know, having them throw down like crazy verses, you know, unexpected flows over certain types of melodies. I thought that was super fun, so I was doing that. And then eventually, you know, I passed the torch onto some of the team members because, there's so much things coming through. I was doing features at the same time, and my ambush was starting up. So right now I oversee a group of producers, and I work in a entertainment company called LDH, where I also oversee a label and also the music and publishing. So what I do mainly now as a guy sort of behind the scenes is to sort of, bridge the gap between Japan and the rest of the world. Because as you know, Japan, even to this day, is very closed. It's got its unique culture. So, the music industry itself as well. Like I said, we have the last standing Tower Records in the world. So that's telling of what kind of music industry we have. Like, people still talk about, how are we going to sell CDs? Yeah. And, I'm not talking about vinyl because young kids think it's cool. Like, people still properly like try to make money off of CDs. Like, it's happening. Yeah. 2020, Right. So Japan's very different. So what I do is bridge the gap, make the Japanese musicians understand the difference in the creative aspect as well as the commercial aspects of the business. On a B2B level, I try to introduce some of the new startup and different platforms, music platforms that people utilize to for publishing and such, and try to synergize with the current state of Japan and the Japanese music industry and the rest of the world.
You were, I read an article, you were quoted as being very much inspired by Andy Warhol's quote, "Making money is art, and working is art, and good business is the best art." Would you say, is that still true today?
Yeah, I mean, I was, for me, that quote was very hip hop. In a sense that, not that hip hop is all about money, but it allows for different walks of life, and it's conducive for people who are maybe struggling to think, why can't I be creative and also be business savvy at the same time? So I felt like that quote embodied that. And the fact that Andy Warhol said it, I thought that was hilarious. So to this day, I somehow agree. And Comme des Garçons, the fashion brand. Yeah. I don't want to misquote this, but I remember Ray Kawakubo of Comme des Garçons saying something of the same effect. So I was like, two people that I really, really respect saying the same thing. And it kind of has like a certain, like, for me personally, like a hip hop root, and I'm thinking, wow, that's cool, So for me, I still kind of, believe that.
Yeah. Wow. How important would you say, though, is the business side of the performing arts? Because I think, as you've said, and as several artists, there's a lot of artists who like to stay in that lane. They like to just create, but then end up having a lot of challenges when it comes to the business side. How important is business to you as a performing artist?
I think it's very important, because, if you're an artist, if you're creative, you don't want to, leave your life in the hands of someone who might potentially take advantage of you, So to be wise about, every step you take, if you believe in your craft, especially, you want to make sure that it's represented correctly and you're getting the, right end of the stick, so to speak. So for me, understanding business is very important. And the more you get into it, the evolution of it's very exciting, so pretty much, like I was mentioning about the different startups that I work with, and it almost opens up a new realm of creativity for me when I meet these different business creatives. I will put it that way. So for me, the business and the creative goes hand in hand.
Yeah. So, and so one question I oftentimes ask creatives, because especially I think it's very important in the times where we're in right now, this moment we're having right now. I think it's important in general just to be able to balance out one's ability to make make a living off of actual performance, as in being out here in the world, versus passive income, and being able to find a good balance in that. And I feel like that's especially like relevant at this particular moment, right? Where people can't really physically be present to do their work, to make a living. And so how do you go about balancing that? Like, and if you were able to, I guess, guess like how much, like what percentage of the living you make off of this is passive versus you having to physically be present, if you don't mind sharing that, of course.
No, of course. I don't know about the percentage per se, because I dabble with a lot of different things.
Yeah, sure.
I think when I first started working in the music industry, there was a person that mentioned this to me, and it was a record company promoter who said, "Oh, you know what? Please make a hit. And by doing so, you'll do us a favor and you do yourself a favor and live the royalty life." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, you could just be sitting around and royalty money coming in, and, basically to your point, it's like a passive, income, if you will, if that's what you mean. And for me, I thought I was like, wow, okay. What's a royalty life, and it like, I don't want to stress it in a sense that, you shouldn't do music just for the sake of royalty. But I thought, wow, okay. So by having these passive incomes coming in, you could sort of focus on other things and, keep working on, different projects. So for me, I think that was sort of a point of excitement for me. I thought, hey, that motivated me to make good songs, do different projects, whatever I was into. And I thought, hey, whatever creative stuff I do, it'll be exciting for the rest of the world, as well as it's going to generate income for the future to come. So I thought, I was really creating these assets for myself that will keep generating income for me. With that, obviously, like it's pretty much like the main pillars of businesses, making music, doing live shows, and merch. And we're heavy into that here in Japan with the production company that I work with as well. With the music kind of, getting slowing down a little bit, and the live shows slowing down, everyone's sort of now focusing on the online virtual situation. So I've been actually working for the past couple of years on how we can make our virtual presence stronger, because in the future, you'll be selling tickets online, you'll be buying merch online, like skin, it's like clothing, if you will, for the artists and such. And you can buy like light sticks online, and so that's like a whole different commerce right there. So yeah, but anyway, for me right now, I would say my rough guess is like over half, 60% is passive income right now.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And then the rest is me trying to generate new ones, trying to find that new entrance into a new business, if you will.
Listening to you talk about the many businesses that you dabble into, how much would you say, because you did study business and marketing, how much of that did do you attribute that to your schooling versus just real life experience?
For me, when I was there, I was heavily into marketing because I thought, wow, Madonna keeps reinventing herself and revamping Madonna, the business, and people could attribute the same person as a new entity. And I thought that concept was very, very interesting. Over the years, I would see different artists, even in the hip hop realm, doing different things. So I think my education in Boston College studying marketing really helped, book-wise, and also with some of the experiences I had from the projects I was involved in. Like, for example, this is a funny story. So, but for one of my classes, we're supposed to just come up with a fictional product and sell it, right? So I came up with this thing called Kasai Floormaster 2000. So it was 1994, so the year 2000 seemed futuristic. Anyway, right. I cut up a bucket to make it look like it was this automated floor cleaning robot that would have a sensor that wouldn't bump into the walls, right? So I would make this video on VHS and pulling it with a string, and my teammates would videotape it. And then a teammate, her last name was Kasai, and obviously a Japanese name, Toyota, Honda. Like it rings this it rings a certain branding bell, if you will. So we called it Kasai Floormaster 2000, and then I presented this automated floor cleaning robot, pretty much like a Roomba, and then that was fun. We got an A for that project. They were like, oh, that's such a cool concept. Yeah, I don't know when that's gonna happen, but that's cool. Fast forward, someone comes up with Roomba. I was like, oh shit, so that's when I learned, I need to trademark.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, that was so stupid of me. But you know what? Maybe someone was already in the making with it, so I don't want to take credit for it, saying that I came up with it first. But at least around that time when I was mentioning it, my teacher back then was like, wow, that's a genius concept, and maybe you should go into engineering or something. And I was like, yeah, maybe, but I don't have the smarts for it, so I just stick to marketing. But anyway, so for me, I learned the importance of trademarking. Just life lessons, man.
Yeah. And the importance of action, right? Like once, you have that, you have a great idea. And I think so many of us as creatives, we get hit with so many ideas and things that we could potentially move on. But in this industry, that's our entire peer group, right? Like everyone's doing that. So it's that action is important as well, But that's crazy. You were
ahead of your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we close out, I just wanted to ask, so what is on the forefront for you all at Ambush? Like, what are your upcoming projects?
What's on the horizon?
Yeah. So look, we work with Nike, Converse. We just released our Astro Boy figure. We're always about collabs. Obviously, we've been doing the Paris collection, fashion weeks and such, but everybody knows on the news that now the men's week is canceled. Potentially September upcoming shows are canceled. Gucci, Saint Laurent, they're pretty much leaving the fashion calendar to do their own thing. So there's a lot of change going on in the fashion industry. So for us as well, like I was mentioning earlier, we're all about change. We're excited to take on the challenge. So we're working on new designs, Yoon is, and we're looking to work towards the next collection and how to show it. And it could become virtual. We're currently building a new system to show the world what's coming next. So, I guess stay tuned.
Okay.
We'll keep everybody posted.
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Verbal, thank you so very much.
We appreciate you, brother.
This was a great conversation. We really enjoyed it. We wish you the best of luck and continued success to you and Yoon and your whole team. So thank you.
Wow, thank you. It's good to see you face to face, Stan, and then nice to meet you, Rachelle. And I'm really looking forward to catching up in Washington D.C.
Yes.
On your way.
Thanks for listening to Artistry, where art meets industry. This podcast has been brought to you by Substantial Art and Music. For more information, please visit www.subartandmusic.com. You can also follow us on social media at subartandmusic. We'll see you soon, but talk to you sooner. Peace.